I'm Mike.
I'm Sam. Let's get into it.
Coach Saban, you said that
I can't hear you.
You said that they were going to, can you hear me now? No.
What?
You said that they would try and take away Devontae Smith. Why have they not been able to do that?
What?
Welcome to episode 60 of the Mike and Sam podcast. With a plethora of, NFL draft news, some trades going on, some pro days that have been going on the past couple of days. We decided let's do a quick preview of the NFL draft that's coming up soon in April. So obviously the order is set. There's been some trades recently with the 49ers moving up to 3, the Dolphins moving back, kind of playing Monopoly. And just the pro days have been great to watch, Justin Fields, Mac Jones, Zach Wilson. So what are your do you see any of the quarterback, hierarchy changing after watching some of these pro days?
I think Kellen Mond is starting to rise up some of the draft boards. I listened to Bruce Arians sitting at pick number 32 speak recently, and he said quarterback is in the play at pick 32, which honestly surprised me. I think they're in the Super Bowl window, not even thinking about the future. But Bruce Arians is a guy who I think wants to establish a winning culture after Tom Brady and kind of with the rest of the roster when Tom Brady does leave. So I look at it like Trey Lance, Justin Fields, all those top 4 guys, top 5 guys aren't going to be there. I'm looking at a Kellen Mond who I just watched his pro day. I know guys are starting to be higher on him. He looked really good in that pro day. Wasn't the greatest in the interviews, but I think that's a guy whose stock is starting to rise.
Yeah, I mean, Kellen Mond's been, someone who has been at Texas A&M for, I feel like, 20 years. I feel like he's been there for so long.
Yeah.
But he's a big body quarterback. He has a large frame. He has a big arm. He can move around the pocket. I just think he has just some weird mechanics that probably can get fixed once he gets to the NFL.
Yeah.
I think his throwing style is a little weird. Like his elbows move out very far. It just doesn't look natural. But he has, just the intangibles. I think he's just like a project that needs to be fixed in order for a team to draft him. I can see a late round, if the Patriots don't go with a draft pick, like a quarterback in the first round, I can see them, in the second round drafting him and kind of having him work with Cam Newton a little bit because they are similar styles with their bigger guys. They're taller. He probably has a better arm than Cam Newton, so it might be Cam Newton fails at one point, he can put Kellen Mond in midway through the year.
Yeah, I agree. At the end of the day, I think he's still going to get picked at day 2. I think he's probably going to go second or third round. But if anyone can be a Dak Prescott of this year's draft, it's probably Kellen Mond. But I'm not comfortable with him going on day 1 or even a high second round pick with those starter expectations thrown at him. So with Kellen Mond, again, like you said, he's very robotic. He's not a natural thrower of the football. So I personally don't quite see it with Kellen Mond. Again, I really tend to stay away from those college quarterbacks who feel like they're in college forever. If you're really that guy, usually not even you leave early, but usually you don't need 3-4 years of starting experience and resume to put out there for an NFL team. But nonetheless, he's an interesting prospect.
Yeah, I mean, and it's kind of hard to say. You can't really look at his achievements because he does play in the SEC, which is very hard competition. They haven't really won much when he was there until, Jimbo Fisher's a great coach. And he's kind of building that program up slowly, but there hasn't been much he just doesn't have that many clutch moment, Heisman candidate moments in his career.
Yeah, I think a significant moment now kind of transitioning into some of the other pro days and looking at the pro days as a whole that happened 2 days ago. I think there was 2 days ago. I think a very telling kind of little hidden message that has been sent from the 49ers was Kyle Shanahan deciding to attend Mac Jones's pro day over Justin Fields and what Kellen Mond's pro day. And I think that was very interesting to me. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's interesting, really. Like you said, Mac Jones isn't someone that I would say would fit inside that 49ers offense. I would say they need a running quarterback because they are a very run-heavy team, and Mac Jones isn't really a mobile quarterback. He's more of a, game manager that can really throw the ball down the field. He knows the defense. He knows everybody's role in the offense. he's not really like, if the pocket breaks down, like what is he gonna do? Like he can't run out of the pocket like Justin Fields or Trey Lance. So I was really surprised to see Mac Jones. I mean, to see the coaching staff and John Lynch at the Mac Jones's
Yeah.
pro day, and I mean, watching Mac Jones's pro day, he didn't really have that good of a pro day. I know it's hard. You like, he has a full season that you can look at, and I don't really want to, destroy his whole draft stock off of one pro day that maybe he wasn't having the best day. Like he has a season of film where he was a Heisman candidate, but still, with no pads on, you should be making some of these throws that he just wasn't making. He was really underthrowing a lot of receivers and putting way too much mustard on some throws too. There was a couple like that he dropped in the basket to Devontae Smith, but it is Devontae Smith, so he can maybe elevate his Mac Jones's throws a little bit to look better.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. First off, going off the Mac Jones kind of pro day and him struggling, I look at a guy who I watched 3 years ago at Louisville's pro day in Lamar Jackson, and I know the NFL just reposted some of the highlights a couple days ago, and there were good highlights, but for the most part, that is the most god awful worst pro day I've ever watched. But I still came away from it saying, but it's Lamar Jackson. He's not supposed to look good in shorts and a t-shirt. He looks best when he's in full football pads, running a 4-3 in the backfield, making guys miss and throwing in that way. When I look at Mac Jones, he has to look his best in shorts and a t-shirt. So for me, that's where it's a little bit concerning. Now, going off of your point with John Lynch and obviously Kyle Shanahan attending Mac Jones's pro day, and then I think the rationale where people connect Mac Jones to the 49ers, even without that little fact, is that you look at Kyle Shanahan, the quarterbacks he's coached, he really wanted to coach Kirk Cousins, and it was almost a done deal. In 2018, he'd be traded there. Obviously, that never happened. He coached RG3 in Washington way early on in his career, which to your point, that's more the Justin Fields type build. But he had great success with Matt Schaub as his quarterback. Then he ended up having his most successful years with Matt Ryan at the helm with the Atlanta Falcons when he was the offensive coordinator there. Obviously, he's up 28-3 in the Super Bowl. We all know how that went. Then again, he later goes on to have success with Nick Mullins as a backup, and then eventually Jimmy G as a starter. So I think everyone sees that and says Mac Jones is the closest to all those guys than anyone in this entire draft is, no less out of the guys who are going to be available at the third pick. So I think people see that and associate Mac Jones with the 49ers. But where I disagree with that line of thought is that I think the 49ers traded up to 3 to elevate that ceiling at the quarterback position, not to secure it. I think he sees guys like Matt LaFleur doing great with Aaron Rodgers. I think he saw when he lost the Super Bowl, the guy on the sideline who he couldn't even control, Patrick Mahomes, taking over the game. I think he saw Andy Reid say, hey, we have Alex Smith, but we need to increase that ceiling. So this is where I think the 49ers are going with this pick. And I do think it's going to be Justin Fields.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be pretty crazy to see the first 3 picks off the board. Probably quarterbacks. I mean, I think Trevor Lawrence is pretty set in stone at number 1 to Urban Meyer in Jacksonville. And I think Zach Wilson is probably still set in stone to the Jets, which, I mean, there's no report saying that Jets are going to look into moving Sam Darnold. So I don't know. I think it would be pretty insulting to Zach Wilson getting drafted there and then having to, start off on the bench when you're having such a great year potentially with Sam Darnold there and then Justin Fields. I think it's a pretty safe bet that Justin Fields or Trey Lance goes to San Francisco at 3.
Yeah, and then looking at the fourth pick, actually, I thought, and I kind of wrote the Falcons off of picking a quarterback with the fourth pick because they actually made a clause and kind of renegotiated Matt Ryan's contract to not add more money onto it, but kind of push it more years down the road. So he's actually extended through more years. So they have even more years of Matt Ryan. I want to say 3 years now, reaching up until his age 39, age 40 season, which I don't agree with. But beyond that, I thought that kind of meant, okay, they're trying to milk this Super Bowl window that they think they have. But there's been multiple reports now. I've heard it from Chris Sims. I've heard it from Peter King. I've heard it from multiple other sources that they've had like quote unquote an absolute love affair with Trey Lance and I guess there's been information that's leaked that Trey Lance might fall to number 4 for the Falcons, but I think that might be a little bit of smokescreen from the Falcons and saying, "Hey, whoever wants the 4th quarterback in this draft class, you better come trade up with us to get him or else we're gonna take him." So, I think it could be some of that.
Yeah, I mean, Matt Ryan, I still think he's a good quarterback. I think he still has a couple of years left in him. So I don't really think they should go with
Yeah.
quarterback at that draft or that draft pick that they have. But I don't know. Atlanta, like, even if maybe they do need to get a quarterback, just blow up the core that they have now, trade Matt Ryan. But like, because it seems they haven't made the playoffs since they lost the Super Bowl. They always start off so slow and then go on like a semi-hot streak, win like 5 games, and it comes down to the last couple of weeks to make the playoffs, and they just don't do that. So maybe it is time to trade Matt Ryan, but I don't see them doing it in this draft. I mean, I'm looking at a mock draft right now on CBS Sports, and it has them taking Kyle Pitts at 4, which Kyle
Mm,
Pitts is a freak athlete. I mean,
yeah.
similar to Julio Jones, but they don't even know how to use Julio Jones properly. So what good would that do with Kyle Pitts in that lineup?
Yeah, I completely agree, and let's say they take, Trey Lance, who obviously, out of all these guys, needs the most development, though he has really great raw physical talent. He was in a system where if your first read isn't there, tuck the ball and run the ball. So he wasn't even asked to go through his read, no less. He has proven to be able to read in NFL or even college defense in that way. So I look at by the time he develops, I feel like it's a weird window of their roster is going to be very aged. So I think they should just keep building the roster and kind of retooling that roster. So by the time they do get a rookie quarterback, then they could capitalize on that rookie quarterback window we see teams like the Arizona Cardinals trying to capture right now.
No, I do think Matt Ryan has a couple of years left in him. That's why they shouldn't jump to the
I
conclusion
agree.
at quarterback here. So just look. What are your like? I know there are some reports saying that the Bengals at 5, they definitely need a lineman. Penei Sewell is probably one of the best prospects coming out of college, but Joe Burrow was like frantically pushing for them to draft Jamar Chase since they were teammates. So do you think they should go with that flashy pick? More of a Cowboys type pick versus a Colts type pick with a offensive lineman.
Yeah, either one they pick, there's going to be a lot of backlash, I think, from a section of Bengals fans. I think at the end of the day, I would make my quarterback happy. I think you spent the first season and a half, the half season kind of factoring in this offseason and last offseason a little bit, but the entire season kind of making him unhappy in a sense of not protecting him, obviously, with the offensive line and kind of surrounding him with some guys like AJ Green that didn't even want to be there. So I think you should get him more familiar with some of his guys. I think Jamar Chase is a more rare commodity, or no, not a more rare commodity because that's not true at all. Offensive linemen and great offensive linemen are way more hard to find than elite receivers. But I think Jamar Chase at this point is a more sure thing than Penei Sewell. I think Penei Sewell is surprisingly raw. I know he has great physical upside, but I think everyone was calling him kind of a blue chip prospect, and I actually disagree with that. I think there are some like technique errors he does need to fix in his game, even though Oregon does have a great track record with some offensive linemen. So I do think they should draft Jamar Chase, who is more of a sure pick in my opinion.
I mean, it definitely would be a flash pick, and they already would have that chemistry there. I know if Jamar Chase went to the draft last year, like if he was eligible, because he was a sophomore last year, so he wasn't eligible, but he could have been a hell of a pick for them. Or he could have
Yeah.
been like one of the higher end wide receivers that were drafted last year, and he's probably the best one out of this class, even though, Devontae Smith is coming off his Heisman Trophy winning season. But if I was the Bengals, I would go with Penei Sewell. Like the most mind blowing fact about Penei Sewell is he didn't let up a sack 3 years at Oregon, which I think is just insane.
Yeah,
Like
it's
how does,
insane.
how does that not happen? But I just don't. Your franchise quarterback is coming off a season-ending ACL injury, and you're going to go out there and pick another wide receiver that doesn't really fix anything for them. He could still get hurt again because their offensive line is like Swiss cheese. So I would really go for the offensive lineman there.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you're probably absolutely right. Um, where I where my rationale does drift towards Jamar Chase a little bit. I feel like one elite receiver could kind of make up a large chunk of your offense and offensive production if Joe Burrow is as great as we think he is, which I do. I think Joe Burrow right this second is a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. And I think he has an Aaron Rodgers-esque ability to the point where you give him one elite receiver, you don't even have to touch the rest of the receiving room for the most part. With Penei Sewell, putting one really good offensive lineman on a dumpster fire and having to eventually, let's say Penei Sewell ends up being Laramie Tunsil, you're going to have to allocate $20 million a year to that tackle position where the rest of the Bengals offensive line is still a dumpster fire. So your offensive line is still a dumpster fire. I feel like from a financial standpoint, it's just a little bit smarter for them to go for that big receiver instead of go for that big offensive lineman so they can kind of fill out the rest of the offensive line. But for the immediate sense, I do absolutely agree with you. And I think Penei Sewell for year 1, year 2, year 3 would be a more smart pick.
And if they go with Jamar Chase, they would have an absolutely stacked wide receiver group, like right off the bat for young Joe Burrow's career. T. Higgins was a rookie last year, had a pretty good year.
He's good, yeah.
Tyler Boyd, he's a little more of a veteran. And then, if they get Jamar Chase, I think that's a great three punch for Joe Burrow. And I think it would really, like, if they did go with Jamar Chase, having like a receiver core like that Joe Burrow can grow up with in the NFL, I think it would be great for the Bengals potentially.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. A little bit of a side point here. I'm a little bit disappointed that Justin Ross was cut by the Bengals this season. I want to say he was picked up from the Giants. I hope he turns around his career because I do think he's more than just a speed guy. But going on to the aspect of the big kind of trade that I think was left out of it is the Philadelphia Eagles. And I think it was an absolutely phenomenal move for them to trade back into the 12th pick in the draft, because I'm looking at what they had the 6th pick in the draft. I think they're dying to go receiver again. I know it's bad process to pick the same position 2 years in a row, but I think they really want one of these top receivers. You trade back from 6 to 12, you might be getting the same exact guy or the same 2 or 3 guys that you were looking at, because I think I think they might assume that Jamar Chase is going to be gone at number 5. If he is, then you're looking at pick 12, either Kyle Pitts, Jalen Waddle, or Devontae Smith. One of those 3 guys is going to be there. If not, if your preference is one of those other receivers, as there's a lot other first-round receivers, then you can go that guy. So I think that was a really smart move while kind of adding to their draft capital, which they desperately need.
And even if those guys are gone, Elijah Moore from Ole Miss, he's an elite route runner. He's a speedster. If you watch his pro day, he had a really great 3-cone drill. So, Ole Miss produces the wide receivers. You have DK Metcalf and you have A.J. Brown. So the Eagles, they definitely need weapons. I don't know. They might need to, work on their defense a little bit. They'd lost some players in the secondary the past couple of years for just getting old, retiring, or just going to another team. So I think they can go either like in a wide receiver, like you said, or a defensive back at the 12th pick.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where I look at the Cowboys at 10, 10? And a lot of reports are saying they're going to go Patrick Surtain if he's there. I do think he's there. I was watching Patrick Surtain's pro day. I was trying to watch some of his Alabama tape. For some reason, it's really good, but it's not like top 15 cornerback in the draft, top 10 cornerback in the draft good, in my opinion. I just think there's a lack of fluidity to his game, though there is speed to his game. One, I do kind of doubt his top end speed. And 2, there's not that quick twitch like Jalen Ramsey. I know that's a very high expectation, but there's not like that quick twitch Tre'Davion White that you really need to be an elite cornerback at the next level. So to be honest, he's probably the player I'm lowest out of all the like top 15 picks that are going to be there. I'm just not the biggest Patrick Surtain fan, though. I think they do make that move and pair him up with his old Alabama teammate and Trevon Diggs.
Yeah, I just think like cornerback is a position that's like really hard to evaluate from their pro day, because you really want to have them like see what they can do one-on-one with a top-tier receiver. So I'll cut him a little slack with like his pro day not being that great, but Cowboys definitely need to evaluate their defense. I mean, they've been going offense for so long now. They've been allocating so much money into so many players that's really hurting their team. So getting a young core on defense that are on these rookie contracts. Hopefully they can win. Fortunately for the Cowboys, 8-8 is not a record anymore with the 17 game expansion, so they don't have to worry about going 8-8 for another year or anymore.
Absolutely, yeah. That's the thing I love the most getting into the expansion. First off, I love how NFL players are reacting to it, like Alvin Kamara. Like, this happened about 2 years ago, 3 years ago? The decision had been made a long time ago. Second off, I love that there's no 500 football teams anymore, ever, potentially. So you're either a loser or you're a winner, and I kind of love that.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm guessing you're in favor of the 17 games.
From a player health standpoint, obviously no. That's very hard to argue that 17 games would be better or the same for player health. But from an entertainment standpoint, absolutely.
Yeah, it's always gonna be exciting to watch another football game. But, I just it's a little weird because obviously some records are gonna be like
Yeah.
quarterbacks are able to throw for 5,000 yards more easily now and break Peyton's record potentially or for his touchdowns and and I don't want that to happen. I don't want my boy's record
I
to
respect that.
get replaced.
Well, maybe there'll be a little asterisk next to the 17 game season, as it's hard to compare kind of the 70s, 60s, 50s era with that 14 game season as well.
Yeah, right. So another pro day I want to go back on is Zach Wilson's. We kind of glossed over him at the beginning of the episode. So
Yeah.
watching his pro day, I mean, he really was implementing a lot of those baseball style throws that are so important today. Russell Wilson uses them all the time. Patrick Mahomes uses them. Kyler Murray. So like. Is he like really? Do you think he's pretty close to Trevor Lawrence right now? I know Chris Sims is like. I think Chris Sims put him at 1 on his top 5 list.
Yeah.
So would you be at all shocked if the Jaguars go Zach Wilson instead at number 1?
I would be extremely shocked, not only because of kind of the evaluation of the two players, way more so than that. Argue Trevor Lawrence is better, argue Zach Wilson is better, all you want. It's significantly easier to pick Trevor Lawrence because of the politics that go on in football. If Urban Meyer picks Trevor Lawrence and Trevor Lawrence busts, it's who thought this guy was going to bust? This guy was the consensus number 1 pick. He's the golden boy. He's been projected to be the number 1 pick since his freaking senior year in high school. You can't blame me. You can't blame the general manager. You can't blame the heads of the scout department for Trevor Lawrence busting, where you pick Zach Wilson over Trevor Lawrence. If this dude is amazing, but not even as good as Trevor Lawrence, you're never going to hear the end of it. And you're probably going to be fired over it. So I think Trevor Lawrence is a lock for the first pick, as I honestly think Zach Wilson, unless the Jets are really stupid, which I know they are. But I think Zach Wilson is a lock for the second pick as well. But getting to something I was going to say to you before we started recording, which I wanted to save for now, I think Zach Wilson's arm talent is being slightly, and when I say slightly, I mean very tiny bit overrated. I think if you asked Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, and Zach Wilson to all throw their hardest football with the most amount of effort possible, I think Zach Wilson, by probably like a fraction of a second, would come in last out of all those guys. I think Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields have stronger arms than him, raw arms, but it's kind of him being able to paint the corners and him being able to throw from all the different arm angles that he does what really impresses people. Not only that, but him being at BYU, which had more of a pro style offense, much more of a pro style offense compared to Justin Fields and even Trevor Lawrence. So I think that coupled with all of his kind of baseball esque talents and his ability to read the field to go through progressions, I think that's what's putting him for some people over Trevor Lawrence, though I don't think he's quite there yet. And I honestly think Justin Fields is closer to Zach Wilson than a lot of people are kind of making out to believe right now.
Yeah, it's like I mean, like the quarterback rankings like an accordion. I remember at the end of the season, after Ohio State kind of struggled against Northwestern, people were like really questioning or Justin Fields' skill level. He was really dropping down the hierarchy for these quarterbacks. But now after that pro day, people are back on top and being like, oh, he's up there with the best of them. I mean, he was throwing absolute dimes some of them was very impressive. But I kind of fell in love with Zach Wilson after watching that pro day. He was
Yeah.
making off-platform throws that were right on the money. One foot on the ground, the other one up in the air. I was getting very impressed by him. But I was just pulling the question. I really think that the Jaguars would make a stupid decision if they don't go with Trevor Lawrence. I just think he's just he's big, he's tall. He has the intangibles. He's tough, and he just has one of the best arms. We haven't seen out of a quarterback in quite some time.
Yeah, absolutely. With Trevor Lawrence, I didn't like him measuring in at what I think barely under 6'6", 6'5", and like 3/4 inches. Correct me if I'm wrong there, which obviously I don't care about the height, but he was 210, 205. Now I know he's not been gaining weight. In fact, he's been cutting weight a little bit. He's just about to have surgery on that left shoulder. So he's not lifting. He's not in peak shape. That does make me a little bit nervous. He has a very slender frame. And something with Trevor Lawrence that I watched at Clemson that worries me a little bit is not nearly as bad as this guy, but kind of reminds me of this in the sense of like Tua Tagovailoa gets hit a lot. And I think Trevor Lawrence doesn't get hit nearly as much as Tua did at Alabama. But there's something about Trevor Lawrence being as big as he is. He doesn't know how to avoid contact and getting hit really hard. I think a great example of that was the Ohio State game. He was getting absolutely cracked almost every single play. And throughout his college career, when he's playing really good teams, that's been the case. I think when he's been playing lower levels of competition, which the ACC does do, he's kind of getting the ball out quick, being surgical in that way. But again, he's not Big Ben where he's 6'5" and could take guys hitting him all day and can throw him off because of that frame. At 6'10", let's say best case scenario, he's 225, 230 by the start of the season. He still is an injury or a risk injury, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, he is a little bit of a twig in the lamest of terms I can create. But Justin Fields, I think he's like 3 inches shorter, and I think he has 10 pounds on him. So a lot of people kind of
I like that.
one of his downfall or a lot of his Justin Fields' cons is that he takes a lot of hits. But him having more weight than Trevor Lawrence's, he can kind of sustain some of those hits more than Trevor Lawrence can. I mean, if you look at the Ohio State game from this year and last year, like you're talking about, that hit that was called a targeting that through I forgot what the player was, but out of the game, I think it was Sean White. He was down for the count for quite some time, and then he obviously came back in. But Justin Fields in Clemson's game had that that targeting play right to the back of the rib cage, and he was down for the count, but he came back in, and I think that was a harder hit than Trevor Lawrence got. So these guys are both tough, but I think Justin Fields is really, really tough, and that's kind of one of my pros for him.
Yeah, out of this kind of big four that has emerged with Trey Lance, Mac Jones, or big five, I should say, I just feel like, if you go by history, at least two, if not three of them are going to bust and going to bust pretty bad. If we kind of go by historical setting, I just look at Justin Fields. Again, we talked about this in previous episodes. The Elite 11, coachability, Ryan Day, Urban Meyer talking about him a little bit, saying he thinks he has the physical talents to succeed at the NFL level. I just feel like he has that kind of it factor about them, and just that coachability that at the next level, he's going to come in and be a little bit raw in terms of reading defenses, going through his progressions, staring down a receiver for too long. But I think those are things that can be coached out of a guy. And I think if anyone can get those things coached out of him, it is Justin Fields.
I mean, you're looking at someone who got beat out by Jake Fromm, who's now a third string in Buffalo, and then he comes to Ohio State and puts up Heisman Trophy winning numbers, 2 years in a row. So he can take criticism and he can elevate his skill. Someone like Trevor Lawrence, he's been in the system where he was the guy for 3 years. I know he was supposed to be a red shirt his first year, but Kelly Bryant really wasn't performing well, so he went into the lineup and helped them win the national championship. So Trevor Lawrence. I mean, obviously, I don't know this. I'm making some assumptions that maybe he is a little tough on criticism because he has been that guy for his whole life. Justin Fields is someone that can really change his skill around quarterback. So I think him going to San Francisco would be really good for him because I think Kyle Shanahan does work great with quarterbacks. But I just
I'm
want to.
so
You can say your point, and then I'll bring up. I want to ask you a question about this power five of quarterbacks.
okay. Real quick, I just want to say I love that you brought that up. If someone wants to say, "Hey, he got beat out by Jake Fromm," well, listen, Joe Burrow got beat out by Dwayne Haskins. This has happened throughout NFL history. I forget the guy who beat out Tom Brady at Michigan. He went on to play pro baseball, tried to come back into the NFL, played one game for the Dallas Cowboys, and was never in the NFL ever again. So this happens all the time. And if you look at every single great quarterback in NFL history, they have some sort of low point, not only in their early career, but at their college career. You look at Aaron Rodgers, who's supposed to be the number one pick, gets picked in the late 20s, has to sit behind Brett Favre, has a really bad relationship there, and is thrown to the fire in his contract year saying, if you don't perform, you're never going to be an NFL quarterback. You look at Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott, again, like I said, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, they all had career altering lows, whether that be the college game or the pro game, that really changed their career for the better. Every single great quarterback has that. And when I look at Trevor Lawrence, he hasn't had that yet. I think that's going to come early on in his career. And I'm just a little bit nervous that he's not going to be able to respond to it the best way, whether it be the Jaguars losing, you know, a lot of games in his first two seasons or something like that. But I would love to hear your question now.
Yeah, I'll just say one more thing and then I'll ask you. It's going to be great for Justin Fields if he gets picked by the 49ers to be able to go into a Super Bowl caliber team.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be an issue with Trevor Lawrence, going to Jacksonville with not a great roster at all. I think he's going to – I don't know how he's going to handle, losing games when he's been the guy, winning so many games in high school and then going to Clemson, winning so many games, playing almost 3 national championships, which is kind of pretty unheard of. So I don't know let's see if I'm excited to see if he can, handle that adversity. But, this quarterback draft class, we have, Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, Mac Jones, Trey Lance. Rewind, 2016, you have Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, who am I forgetting? Josh Rosen as well. Who would you say would be has the best potential to be, the Josh Allen or the Lamar Jackson, and who has the best potential to be that Josh Rosen?
I think clearly the guy who has the potential to be Josh Rosen, not saying this is going to happen, but is Mac Jones in terms of he gets to the NFL. It's a guy who has great mechanics, shows the ability to read a defense, process a defense, have a quick processor, be surgical, and then gets to the NFL, is flustered by the sheer amount of defensive talent that is on display at the NFL, doesn't have not nearly the talent because Josh Rosen didn't have talent at UCLA, but is just overwhelmed by the entire NFL aspect. And I think we saw a little bit flashed potential of that with, a bunch of NFL coaches, Bill Belichick, Kyle Shanahan, the best offensive and defensive mind we've seen in our lifetime potentially, sitting on the sideline, gets a little bit nervous and is kind of thrown off kilter in that way. So I think Mac Jones probably has the most potential to be the Josh Rosen. The guy who has the most potential to be the Josh Allen, and honestly, maybe the most successful in terms of team accolades out of this entire draft, is simply the guy that the 49ers take, in my opinion. I'm so confident in Kyle Shanahan's ability to be a great offensive mind and quarterbacks coach to the point where I would put all my money in the world, honestly, out of the 3 quarterbacks who aren't going to be taken with the top 2 picks. The best out of that 3, whether that be Trey Lance, whether that be Mac Jones, whether that be Justin Fields, the best 3 is probably going to be wearing a 49er uniform, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree about what you said about Mac Jones having the most Josh Rosen potential. No offense, Josh Rosen. I know this is kind of an insulting topic if you are listening. But yeah, I completely agree. This 49ers team, obviously last year they battled a lot of injuries. They kind of couldn't really stay healthy at all. And then 2 years ago, they were in the Super Bowl. So whoever they draft, I think whoever they draft is going to be better than Jimmy Garoppolo. He was just a glorified game manager his whole career in San Francisco. So if they're able to throw in a more athletic guy that can throw the ball down the field. You know, we talked about Justin Fields being able to run around the pocket, having physical intangibles. And then, you look at someone like if the 49ers draft Trey Lance, at North Dakota State, he went 41 touchdowns and 1 interception. So he's very careful with the ball. He's very smart with where he throws it. So I think the 49ers will be in good hands with either quarterback they draft. I think it's just not the skill of the player, but just the coaching staff that's going to be able to coach up whoever they draft.
Yeah, again, and going on to kind of that haul that the 49ers did trade away, they traded a first round pick swap. So they swapped 3 for 12. They traded, I want to say, this year's third rounder, which people don't realize top 3 round draft picks are pretty valuable in the NFL. Usually, if you see a guy like AJ Bourne get traded to the Broncos, it's a 4th round pick, it's a 5th round pick. Usually, top 3 round picks aren't traded all that much unless they're for actual good players with multiple years on their contract. And then two future first round picks. I feel like you don't do that unless you want to get a guy with a significantly higher ceiling than Jimmy Garoppolo. Not only that, but a guy who you're willing to have wiggle room with his development, not a guy who everyone perceives to be the win now guy who's the most NFL ready in Mac Jones. I remember so vividly in 2018, Josh Rosen's the most NFL ready quarterback prospect in this entire draft. And usually the guys who are the most quote unquote NFL ready guys, the guys who are the most quote unquote NBA basketball ready guys are usually the guys with the lowest athletic ceiling. So we kind of say, hey, but they're going to come into the league right away and be really good. They said that about Dwayne Haskins as well. And usually quite the opposite happens.
Yeah, I mean, I think whoever they pick is going to be a little bit of a project. Justin Fields, Trey Lance. I think it's pretty certain that they're going to draft one of those guys. So there are going to be a little bit of project. I wouldn't be surprised if Garoppolo does start the first couple of games.
Yeah.
Just for them to, stand on the sideline next to the coach and learn a thing or two. I think that would be really beneficial for them. But I think they're going to go to war in the offseason with Jimmy Garoppolo. And I feel bad for Jimmy Garoppolo because, he comes to San Francisco. The team loves him. George Kittle is seen wearing shirts with his pictures on them, and he's just a fall from grace after losing that Super Bowl.
Yeah, dude, and that's where I get to. I think they need to trade Jimmy Garoppolo for the exact point you just brought up. You don't want to go into the season, hey, we just traded, let's say they traded for Mac Jones with the 3rd overall pick. I think Mac Jones would play pretty comparable to Jimmy Garoppolo in practice. So then you get to a game, hey, I'm starting Jimmy Garoppolo. He's making 25 mil. We're in this kind of win now mode. I'll play Mac Jones either at some point in the season or at the beginning of next season. Flash forward, Jimmy Garoppolo is 6-2. Your football team is incredible. You have a guy in Jimmy Garoppolo who does have some leadership qualities and who's absolutely beloved by the entire 49ers ownership. The entire 49ers fan base will go fight tooth and nail to defend Jimmy Garoppolo. And more importantly than anything, the players buy into Jimmy Garoppolo. The players play hard for Jimmy Garoppolo, and the players love Jimmy Garoppolo. So you're sitting there at 6-2. All the players are convinced Jimmy Garoppolo is the guy. Then you go and switch up, kind of pull a Dolphins with Ryan Fitzpatrick and Tua Tagovailoa, and kind of insert Mac Jones, even though the guys aren't really convinced he's the guy. Then you don't want a culture situation brewing on your hands where players are starting to undermine the coaching staff and they're starting to doubt the coaching staffs and the general manager's position. They feel like they're kind of disconnected from the locker room. They don't know what goes on day to day. So I feel like you need to avoid that situation, whether it be Mac Jones, whether it be Justin Fields. Get rid of Jimmy Garoppolo, kind of force your players and, in a sense, manipulate your players to fall in love with your new draft pick rather than kind of have Jimmy Garoppolo looking over his shoulder.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, if they're going 6-2 and, they do a Dolphins and they put in Tua, you have the potential to lose the locker room. Luckily, the Dolphins kept playing hard and they kept, winning games and they just missed the playoffs last year. But say that, they're 6-2, they switch to Justin Fields or switch to Mac Jones like you were talking about. They start losing games. the players are going to start losing interest, and the coach. I mean, Kyle Shanahan. Obviously, I think he's he probably has a big ego because he is an NFL coach. You got to have a little bit of an ego to be an NFL coach. He's not going to want to go back on his own word and putting Jimmy Garoppolo back in. That's going to cause some issues if they're losing games with their rookie quarterback after starting well with Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah, I feel like it's just not healthy for the rookie quarterback to come into a situation like that. But again, I look at Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't think he's going to get a starting opportunity if he does end up getting traded. I think he'll have to come off the bench and kind of play hero ball in that way. But for the immediate success of the 49ers, it would probably be very smart to keep Jimmy Garoppolo, because if you part ways with him, that's just $25 million of dead money of a guy who's not even on your team. You're going to have to pay him or not. So the rationale there is you might as well have maybe the best backup quarterback in the league. I know he's sitting on the bench for 25 mil, but that's better than him starting for somebody else. But at the same time, again, I think you should just get your rookie quarterback in there. He's in a great system. He has great offensive linemen, a good backfield, great defense to rely upon, and good receivers that could get schemed to get open. So again, I really do believe the best out of that kind of lesser of the three quarterbacks, I think the best one's going to be the 49er.
Yeah, and then one more topic I want to talk about before we end this episode is, we haven't really been talking about the Carolina Panthers, who are probably in the market for a quarterback. I think it's likely that whoever gets picked at 3, they're going to take the other guy that's still available. So likely if, Justin Fields gets drafted, they're going to take Trey Lance. And if Trey Lance gets drafted for the 49ers, they're going to take Justin Fields. Which player do you think, let's in a perfect world, the 49ers are drafting after the Carolina Panthers. Which quarterback would the Panthers go with if they needed it, if they had the first option?
That's a really interesting question. I think Joe Burrow might want Mac Jones, because I think Joe Burrow or Mac Jones is Joe Brady.
Oh, Joe Burrow. Okay, I understand.
Yeah, I think Joe Brady, if he had any deciding factor in it, which he's the offensive coordinator, he runs their offense. Matt Rule is more that CEO type of coach. He doesn't even have a hand in the offense. If they want to go offensive player, they want to go quarterback, I'd imagine Joe Brady has just as much say, if not more, than Matt Rule, in fact. So he might want that kind of Mac Jones-esque quarterback in there. But they keep talking about, they're being very brutally honest, which I think is kind of a bad thing, but they're being very brutally honest with Teddy Bridgewater in that they want to increase the ceiling of their football team. They don't want that game manager. They don't want that Teddy Bridgewater. So again, I think their imaginations would fly wild. I really do think they would take Justin Fields. I just don't support that, or any NFL team, no matter if scheme fit, taking Trey Lance over Justin Fields. I don't see it. If it happens, I completely disagree with it. I think the ceilings are very similar, and the floor of Justin Fields is significantly higher, to the point where, again, I just don't see the rationale for Trey Lance over Justin Fields.
Yeah, I think either quarterback being there would be very fun to watch. Just matched up with Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah,
really really fun combination. But yeah, I think Justin Fields would work perfectly there. He just moves around the pocket. I think Matt Rule would be. He's a very creative mind, so I think he would be able to create some creative plays with Justin Fields at the quarterback. But obviously, I think Justin Fields is going to go 3, and I still think Trey Lance would work there. I think Teddy Bridgewater is a good mentor, so he can work with Trey Lance. But I really like Teddy Bridgewater, so it's going to be sad, to him, have a terrible knee injury, work back up to become the starting quarterback of the Panthers, and obviously getting his job taken away from him by a rookie quarterback.
absolutely. Going on to 2 more little, very tiny points I wanted to say. If you're Justin Fields' agent, I would be sitting here telling Justin Fields, dude, you're in a way better position than Trevor Lawrence is. You're in a way better position than Zach Wilson is. You can get picked to one of the most storied, if not the most storied franchise in NFL history, excluding probably the Steelers and the Patriots now in the 21st century, in the 49ers, a team who had the greatest dynasty ever before this dynasty Patriots team, with great coaching, a winning culture, winning ownership, who are willing to spend any X amount of dollar on winning. Like, dude, you're going to a great situation. So I'd be excited if I was Justin Fields, Mac Jones, or Trey Lance because I think they can fall in a great position. Going on to a Ohio State point I want to make real quick. I think Justin Fields is a little bit do or die for Ohio State in the sense that if you have pro aspirations and you're a 5-star recruit, why not go to Clemson, who's pumping out NFL quarterbacks? Why not go to one of these smaller schools in a pro style offense that gears you towards the NFL more so than an Ohio State system in BYU? Why not go to those schools? So I think Justin Fields, do or die prospect for the future of the Ohio State quarterback.
I mean, I don't know. We do have a really stacked quarterback room after him, and I
Yeah.
think we have a 5-star recruit coming out of high school in Quinn Ewers. So I think the future is bright at the quarterback position. But I completely understand what you're saying. Cardell Jones won a national championship, didn't do anything in the NFL. Dwayne Haskins broke every Big Ten record. Now he's a backup on the Pittsburgh Steelers after getting cut by the football team. So I think it is a little bit do or die with Justin Fields, but I think Justin Fields has a lot of pros that these guys don't have. I think he's
Yeah.
one of the best quarterbacks we've ever had, or not like we've ever had, because obviously Troy Smith won the Heisman, but just the best like NFL prospect quarterback we've ever had.
I completely agree. In my lifetime, at the very least, that's absolutely true. And look, at the end of the day, Ohio State is always going to be able to pull 5-star athletes no matter what position they're at. They'll still be able to pull 5-star quarterbacks if Justin Fields absolutely busts. But I'm talking about that like NFL top 5, top 10 caliber player. I think that is on stakes for Ohio State.
So thank everybody for listening. We're really excited for the NFL draft. It's coming up. We'll probably make some more episodes in the future, so stay tuned for those, and we'll see you in the next one.